so quickly alongside Princess Catherine. This phenomenon is not due to flashy fashion choices, certainly not on some great state occasion, but they gently tell us of the speed of time. Princess Catherine and Prince George made a joint public appearance during their special visit to RAF Coningsby ahead of Armed Forces Day yesterday. And that is precisely what happened. The journey was intended to pay tribute to the dedication of the Royal Air Force and to introduce the young prince to the unique aviation heritage of the United Kingdom. However, within minutes of the first photographs becoming public, royal aficionados worldwide began discussing something entirely different. The prince was of age. The future monarch seemed to be seeing almost eye to eye with Catherine as he stood with his mother inside the hangar of the Battle of Britain memorial flight. Then the tiny kid, who had been holding her hand as if he would never let go, turned round and was strolling by her side with a quiet assurance. His posture had straightened. He grinned with a calmer attitude. He felt surer about himself in his relationships. Not only that, his body language reminded many people of Prince William. Social media was swamped with emotional replies, many of them asking questions like, "When did George become that tall?" And he is becoming William 2.0. He appears to be the future king. Many royal watchers felt as if they had come to the end of one chapter and had begun another. The tale of Catherine and George is much more than their public relations. It is a story about a mother's gradual letting go of her child. The story is also about a child who is gradually taking on the responsibilities that are coming his way. Pause a moment to think of the wonderful experiences which have made the incredible journey they have had together. Royal Air Force Coningsby, June 2026. It was the day when Catherine saw that her tiny kid was becoming a young gentleman. One of the few royal engagements that gives a better picture of George's progressive growth is the visit the family made to RAF Coningsby in Lincolnshire ahead of Armed Forces Day. The visit was a celebration of the history of British military aviation as a whole. Catherine, Honorary Air Commodore of RAF Coningsby, first introduced George to the prestigious Battle of Britain memorial flight. During this trip, George had the opportunity to meet pilots, engineers, and personnel of the Royal Air Force who were responsible for the preservation of iconic aircraft such as the Spitfire and the Lancaster bomber. As soon as they passed over the threshold inside the hangar, they felt a marked shift in atmosphere. For the first time, Catherine was not the one leading George through every single exchange. Instead, she took a cautious step back. She looked at the scene. She paid attention. She grinned with pride as her eldest son climbed into the cockpit of a vintage Spitfire and boldly posed knowledgeable questions about the aircraft. She was glad to have had the experience. Photographers had plenty of chances to get pictures of Catherine, standing only a few feet behind him, with a look of obvious pride on her face. Now it was as if she were no longer controlling him. She was leading the way for him to shine. The most dramatic picture of the day, perhaps, was of a mother and her child standing together, side by side, underneath the giant aircraft. George had almost recklessly touched Catherine's shoulder just a few years earlier. By now, the difference in height had almost entirely disappeared. Catherine now appeared just a little taller than her 12-year-old son. Catherine was 5 feet 9 inches high. Witnesses could not believe their eyes. There was a fan who commented, "It seems like yesterday she was taking him off an aeroplane," almost as if he is looking her in the eye at this time. Someone else had noticed that Kate no longer held his hand. She sees him as the future king. Professionals in the area of body language were equally enthralled. Prince William would frequently adopt a familiar pose when he attended formal functions. George stood with his hands comfortably clasped in front of him. He made sure that while he was conversing with personnel from the Royal Air Force, he maintained eye contact, listened intently, and smiled pleasantly before asking questions. Former royal butler Grant Harold has said several times that William and Catherine will only put George into public roles when they think he is emotionally ready. The visit from the Royal Air Force, RAF, seemed to demonstrate how much confidence George had grown. Catherine appeared to have a somewhat different function during the course of the engagement. She was doing more than protecting her child from the spotlight. She was gently getting him ready to step within it. The 80th anniversary of VE Day will be marked on May 8, 2025. A proud mother watched as her son George took his place among the veterans. Just a few weeks earlier, the country had reached another major milestone, commemorating the 80th anniversary of VE Day. George joined his parents for the first time in one of the most momentous historical commemorations ever witnessed in British history. It was a very significant occasion. One of the key duties for future generations of the royal family will be to engage with veterans who have been so vital in moulding the history of Britain. Catherine stayed close during the engagement. Photographers snapped her leaning in toward George and whispering a few words of comfort before he spoke to the veterans after they had already reached him. She, on the other hand, quickly pulled back as the conversations began. George had posed his inquiries with intent, listened with the greatest respect, kept relaxed eye contact the whole time. After a while, many veterans were praising the young prince for his maturity and his real interest. Catherine's visage had a look of obvious pride during all those discussions. She did not interrupt George, but let him be in command. William and Catherine are slowly introducing George to the monarchy by experience rather than anticipation, as royal family historian Robert Lacey has noted numerous times. One of the most telling instances of this mentality is the evolution of VE Day. This is the men's final at Wimbledon, July 14th, 2024. Mother and son are taking part in one of their favourite traditions. In fact, Catherine has discovered that Wimbledon is one of her most enjoyable royal duties. By 2024, Wimbledon had also become one of George's holdings. Fans couldn't help but notice just how effortlessly mother and daughter seemed to connect with one another during the match as they made their way to their seats inside centre court. Sometimes Catherine would lean forward and explain the toughest parts of the game. George grinned and said, listening closely. They all clapped together, speaking to each other in private, and they laughed on many more occasions in the afternoons. Catherine, patron of the All England Lawn Tennis Club, went to present the trophies, and George was there in the royal box to see with delight. One of Catherine's biggest passions has slowly turned into one of George's, and the images have perfectly captured the evolution of their relationship. King Charles III's coronation date. When's it happen? The King's coronation is Saturday, May 6th, 2023. It was the moment when Catherine became a proud parent, a feeling all mothers have. George had one of the biggest days of his young life, attending the coronation of King Charles III. George was one of the King's pages of honour and performed his duties with a calm demeanour. Meanwhile, Catherine could not conceal the pain she felt. George entered Westminster Abbey as Catherine smiled warmly and proudly, taking countless shots. With millions of people witnessing the historic ceremony, there was one unique moment between mother and son that quietly captivated the hearts of royal enthusiasts. It was not the Princess of Wales who was watching a member of the royal family. It was just a mother, seeing her young boy accomplish something absolutely extraordinary via his efforts. After a while, a fan said, "You could feel the pride in her eyes." Queen Elizabeth II was buried on September 20th, 2022. George provided reassurance in a quiet manner during the emotional parting with Queen Elizabeth II. George says the burial of Queen Elizabeth II was one of the most emotionally draining public occasions he has ever been involved in. To stroll beside senior members of the royal family in front of millions of people across the world demanded a tranquility that was remarkable for a child of just 9 years old. Catherine was nearby all day. The mother and son exchanged encouraging glances discreetly in the eyes of the cameras. Catherine would look at George occasionally in a kind of mechanical way to see whether he was happy out of doors. Catherine had always tried to achieve a careful balance, and those silences reflected that too. Preparing George for his task. She always remembered that he was still a child. Tour dates are September 2016. At another time, George needed his mother's assistance. Catherine's family trip to Canada may best exemplify her parenting style. George was 3 and was hesitant in unfamiliar places. Catherine organised a children's party at Government House in Victoria, frequently bending to George's eye level. She cordially welcomed him to participate. When he was anxious, I held his hand. At every misstep, he grinned. Catherine would let George explore at his own speed, without highlighting him. Those early childbirth photos are still her favourites. Royal parenting specialists have often lauded Catherine's inherent ability to balance royal obligations with emotional support. October 23, 2013, saw Prince George's christening. Where it started. Looking back, it is hard to imagine George was so little. Catherine hugged and kissed him on his baptism day. The photographers captured various photos of the mother looking at the child. George hardly looked away from her. Catherine nearly never looked away from him. They will always remember those images of their journey's commencement. Young mother. Young mother, an infant kid and a kid. They had no idea of the tremendous potential. Go with him, hold his little hand. Observing events during the last decade shows a major shift. Catherine carried George everywhere throughout his early childhood. She boarded the aircraft holding his small hand. Royal travels require kneeling near him. He altered his schoolwear. Pre-wedding jacket adjustments were his norm. These adjustments made him more comfortable in unexpected situations. Slowly, their motions altered. After that, she stopped carrying him. She joined him. She then let him lead. To greet people personally. Ask queries. Be his own royal family spokesman. Catherine made an important gesture at RAF Coningsby today. Her only action was to retreat. I saw. Then he grinned. The youngster whose hand fit in hers is now a serious and self-assured young gentleman who is progressively becoming like Prince William in appearance, mannerisms, and serene sense of responsibility. What moved royal lovers may not have been George's shift. Catherine responded this way. Each joyful grin, each friendly look, every quiet support showed the world that behind the Princess of Wales is something more essential. A loving mother who has spent 12 years raising her firstborn son to be a king, and a compassionate, sensitive young man. The little child next to her at RAF Coningsby says the lesson is already sinking in. Hope you enjoyed watching the video. Please let us know what you think, and bye for now.